I used to believe life was simple. You worked hard, paid your dues, kept your promises, and the rest would fall into place. Maybe that's the way it should have been, but life doesn't care about shoulds. It has a way of testing you until you're nothing but scars and bones, and then it asks if you've got anything left to give. My name's Elijah Ward, though most folks just call me Eli. I grew up in a small Virginia town where the streets smelled of saltwater and diesel, and the loudest sound in summer was the gulls circling over the docks. My father worked the shipyards until his back gave out, and my mother cleaned houses to keep us fed. I didn't have much, but I had grit, and sometimes that's enough to take you far. At 18, I joined the Navy. I wasn't chasing glory, I just wanted out. Out of the same worn streets, out of the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. The Navy gave me discipline, gave me a sense of belonging, but it also gave me long nights staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone back home even remembered my name. That changed the night I met Marie. I was 24, stationed stateside for a few months, when I walked into a small diner near Norfolk. She was working the counter, brown hair tied back in a neat bun, blue eyes sharp enough to stop me cold. Marie wasn't the kind of woman who giggled or fluttered, she carried herself like she knew where she was going. I was hooked from the first moment she poured me a cup of coffee and asked, "Cream or sugar, sailor?" We fell fast. By the time my deployment ended, I had a ring on her finger. We didn't have much, just a one-bedroom apartment with leaky pipes and a second-hand couch, but we had laughter, long nights talking about dreams, and the kind of fire that made me believe we could survive anything. I promised her a good life, and I meant it. After I left the service, I started working odd jobs, mechanic work, hauling loads, even scrubbing decks on private yachts. Anything to save up. By 30, I'd scraped together enough to buy a beat-up fishing charter boat. I called it the Brandy May, after our daughter, who was just a baby then. Running charters wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Sunrise on the water has a way of humbling a man, reminding him he's small compared to the tide. I loved it, every part of it, the smell of the ocean, the way kids' faces lit up when they caught their first fish, the satisfaction of coming home with salt on my skin and a day's work behind me. Marie didn't love it. At first, she pretended. She'd pack me lunches, kiss my cheek before I left, ask about the customers. But as the years wore on, I could see her growing restless. She wanted more than dockside life. She wanted shiny things, trips to wine country, friends with manicured nails and country club memberships. She'd leaf through glossy magazines at night, sighing in a way that told me I wasn't enough. I tried. God, I tried. I took on extra charters, worked myself into exhaustion just so I could surprise her with a new necklace or a weekend away. But every time, it felt like pouring water into a bucket full of holes. That's when Caleb came into the picture. He was 28 when he joined my crew. Lean, sun-kissed, with that careless grin younger men wear like armor. He reminded me of myself at that age, hungry, eager to learn, willing to work for scraps if it meant a shot at something better. I took him under my wing, showed him how to mend nets, how to watch the currents, how to read the clouds before a storm. Marie liked him immediately. Too much, maybe. She'd smile when he came around, laugh at his dumb jokes, linger a little too long when handing him a glass of iced tea. I noticed, but I told myself it was harmless. I trusted her. I trusted him. They were part of my world, and I couldn't imagine betrayal finding its way into something I'd built with my own blood and sweat. But cracks were forming, even if I didn't want to see them. Brandy, our daughter, was a teenager by then, and she was closer to her mother than me. Marie filled her head with complaints, about how I worked too much, how I wasn't ambitious enough, how other men were doing better for their families. I'd hear Brandy repeating those words back to me, her voice sharp in ways that cut deeper than she realized. I told myself things would get better. That maybe Marie was just restless, that Brandy was just a teenager being a teenager. I kept my head down, worked harder, tried to give them the life they thought they deserved. But some storms don't pass. They gather, dark and heavy, until the sky splits open. I didn't know it then, sitting on the bow of my boat watching the sun sink below the horizon, but the life I thought I'd built on loyalty and hard work was about to collapse. And the people I trusted most would be the ones holding the hammer. The worst part about betrayal isn't the moment you find out. It's the weeks, the months leading up to it, when all the signs are there and you convince yourself you're imagining things. You replay little moments, her late-night phone calls, his sudden excuses to stick around after work, and you tell yourself, no, not them. Not her. Not him. But lies have a way of rotting through the floorboards until the whole house collapses. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because the weather had turned ugly, a storm sweeping in earlier than expected. We'd taken a group out that morning, but I cut the trip short when the sky started bruising purple. By 2 o'clock, the tourists were off the boat, grumbling about lost hours, and Caleb said he'd take care of closing up. Normally, I would have let him. But something in me, a gnawing I couldn't shake, told me to head home early. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Marie's car parked crooked, like she'd rushed inside. The blinds were half closed, the house quiet. I stepped through the front door, boots dripping salt water onto the carpet, and there they were. Marie. Caleb. On the couch, tangled up in the kind of closeness you can't mistake for anything but what it is. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The sound of the storm outside filled the silence inside, the wind rattling the windows as my world split open. Marie didn't gasp or cover herself. She didn't even look guilty. She buttoned her blouse slowly, her eyes locking on mine like I was an inconvenience. Caleb couldn't even meet my gaze. The boy I'd treated like family sat there, shoulders hunched, staring at the floor like a coward. I wanted to hit him. Every muscle in me screamed for it. But something heavier pinned me in place. My hands shook, my chest tight, and all I could manage was a single sentence. How long? Marie tilted her head, almost smug. Long enough. Those two words burned more than any blade. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just walked out, my boots still wet, the storm soaking me as I stood on the porch, realizing the life I'd built was nothing but ash. 2 weeks later, Marie filed for divorce. She didn't waste time. She painted me in court as a neglectful husband, a man too obsessed with his boat to care for his family. Her lawyer stood there in a crisp suit, listing my shortcomings like reading from a grocery list: unstable, unfit, unreliable. I sat in that courtroom while strangers decided my worth, while Marie's eyes stayed cold, while Caleb waited outside like a vulture. And the judge bought it. The house? Hers. The car? Hers. Most of the savings? Hers. Custody of Brandy? Hers, with weekends for me if she felt like showing up. When the gavel came down, I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a father in any real sense. I was just a man with a boat and a pile of debts I couldn't cover. Brandy stopped speaking to me not long after. At 16, she was old enough to believe her mother's version of events. You never tried hard enough, she snapped once when I called. Mom deserved better. That was the last real conversation we had. After that, it was one-word replies or silence. So I moved on to the only thing I had left, the Brandy May. The boat creaked with every shift of the tide, the smell of mildew sinking into my clothes. Nights were the worst. Lying there in the cramped cabin, listening to the water slap against the hull, I'd think about how quickly a man's life can be dismantled. 25 years of marriage, gone in 2 weeks. A daughter, gone in 2 sentences. A friend, gone in 2 seconds on a couch. I ate beans from a can, instant coffee for breakfast, and whatever I caught if I bothered to cast a line. I kept working charters, but fewer people booked trips with a man whose name was whispered around town like a cautionary tale. That's Eli Ward, they'd say. His wife left him for some young deckhand. I could feel the pity in their eyes, and pity can drown you faster than any wave. There were nights I stared at the dark ceiling of the cabin, the hum of the marina in the distance, and wondered what the point was. I'd given everything, my service, my sweat, my loyalty, and it had all been stripped away. The silence pressed heavy, and for the first time in my life, I thought maybe the ocean could take me and it wouldn't matter. But I didn't give in. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the faint memory of Brandy as a little girl, giggling as she helped me steer the boat. Maybe it was just that I was too damned angry to quit. Whatever it was, I kept going. Still, I was a shell of a man. I went through the motions, days blurring into nights, until time stopped meaning anything at all. And then, one evening, as the sky faded into dusk, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it. Bill collectors, scammers, they all had my number now. But something told me to answer. Mr. Ward. A voice, male, calm. This is Carter from Halston Brokerage. I've been trying to reach you. I almost hung up. But then he said, back in 1999, you made a small investment through our firm. Do you recall? My mind flashed, faintly, to a buddy of mine back in the Navy. He'd convinced me to put $5,000 into some startup before I shipped out. I barely remembered. Yeah, I said slowly. So? The man cleared his throat. Sir, that company is now Horizon Dynamics. Your shares have split multiple times over the years. As of this quarter, your account balance is just over $12 million. I froze. The words didn't register at first, like he was speaking another language. 12 million? The man repeated it, calm as before. 12 million. And just like that, in the middle of the lowest point of my life, the tide shifted. I sat there on the deck of the Brandy May, phone pressed to my ear, the marina quiet around me, the ocean stretching into the night. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something stir inside me. Not joy exactly. Not relief. But something like hope, raw, trembling, dangerous. I didn't know it then, but that call was the start of everything. The start of my return. When Carter from Halston Brokerage told me the number, I thought it had to be a mistake. 12 million? That wasn't real. That wasn't for a man like me, living on a boat that smelled of mildew and loneliness. But he sounded calm, steady, like this was just another Tuesday at his desk. I scribbled down everything he said, account numbers, instructions, an appointment. When the call ended, I just sat there in the dark, the paper shaking in my hand, the ocean rocking beneath me like it knew something had shifted. Sleep didn't come that night. My head spun with memories of 1999, my buddy Rick leaning over a bar table, convincing me to put $5,000 into a little tech startup. "It's the future, Eli," he'd said, clinking his beer glass against mine. "You'll thank me one day." I'd shrugged, handed over the money, then shipped out with the Navy. I hadn't thought about it since. By morning, I convinced myself it had to be some elaborate scam. People like me didn't stumble into millions. Still, I drove to the address Carter gave me, a tall glass building in downtown Norfolk. I felt out of place the second I walked in, my boots scuffed, shirt wrinkled, surrounded by men in suits and women tapping on tablets. Carter was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with sharp glasses and a steady handshake. He ushered me into an office, laid out folders, graphs, statements, all with my name on them. My signature from 1999 stared back at me, faded but familiar. "This is yours, Mr. Ward," he said, sliding the papers toward me. "Untouched for over 2 decades. The dividends have been reinvested. Horizon Dynamics has exploded in value." I stared at the numbers. Commas where I never thought I'd see them. Zeros that didn't make sense. My chest tightened, but this time it wasn't despair, it was disbelief. "So you're saying," I muttered, my voice rough, "I'm rich?" Carter smiled. "Very." For the first time in years, I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, it was jagged, broken, but it was real. All the nights on that boat, wondering if life had forgotten me, and here was proof it hadn't. Life had been waiting, biding its time, until everything else was stripped away. I left the office with my head spinning. The sunlight outside felt different, sharper. The air tasted like salt and possibility. For years, I'd walked around hunched under the weight of betrayal. Now, suddenly, I stood straighter. I didn't rush out and buy a mansion or a sports car. That's never been me. Instead, I drove down the Carolina coast, searching. After a week, I found it, a quiet piece of land near Beaufort, tucked away from the noise, with a view of the water that took my breath. The kind of place where storms rolled in slow and the mornings came up gentle. I bought it outright. No loans, no signatures I couldn't back. Just mine. Within months, a modest house stood there, a wraparound porch, wide windows, nothing fancy but everything I needed. I filled it with simple furniture, things I chose for myself, not to impress anyone. For the first time since leaving the Navy, I had a home that felt like mine. The first night I slept there, I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the stars. The ocean breeze carried the smell of pine and salt, and I realized I wasn't thinking about Marie or Caleb or what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I had: peace, space, freedom. Word travels fast in small towns, though. It wasn't long before people back in Norfolk started whispering. The broken-down fisherman who lost everything? Turns out he wasn't so broken anymore. And that's when the calls started. Marie's number lit up my phone one evening. I let it ring the first time, then the second, but on the third I answered. Her voice was softer than I remembered, dripping with nostalgia. "Eli," she said, "I made mistakes." I was hurt, confused. "Caleb, he's not the man I thought he was. Maybe we could talk, try again?" I almost laughed, but instead I sipped my coffee and let her words hang in the air. When she finished, I said, "You loved what I could give you, not who I was. You made your choice. Live with it." Then I hung up. 2 days later, Caleb left a voicemail. His tone was different, cocky, rehearsed. "Look, Eli, things got out of hand. We all make mistakes. Maybe we can grab a beer, talk it through." I deleted it without listening to the rest. That was my revenge, not screaming, not fists, not dragging them through court. Just silence. Calm rejection. The kind that burns deeper than any shouted word. But here's the thing, I didn't want revenge to be the center of my life. I wanted purpose. So I found it. I started taking local kids out on fishing trips, the way I used to with tourists. Kids who'd never seen the ocean beyond the pier, who carried heavy stories on small shoulders. Watching their faces light up when they reeled in a fish, it gave me something money couldn't. I reached out to veteran groups too, men and women who came home broken like I did, who lost families and hope. I started a small foundation, funded quietly with a slice of my fortune, to help veterans navigate divorce, housing, job training. I named it the Brandy May Foundation, not just for my boat but for the daughter I still hoped might come back around one day. Every morning, I sat on my porch with coffee, the sun climbing slow, and I thought about how close I'd come to giving up. How close I'd come to letting the ocean swallow me. And now, here I was, building again. Not because I wanted to show Marie or Caleb what they'd lost, but because I wanted to remind myself what I still had left to give. Life doesn't hand out clean slates often. Mine came wrapped in betrayal and despair, but it came nonetheless. And I wasn't about to waste it. The strange thing about betrayal is that, after the shock wears off, life gets quiet. Almost too quiet. There were nights I still woke up sweating, Marie's voice echoing in my head, that one word she spat at me in court, pathetic. But most mornings now started the same way, me on my porch, coffee in hand, watching the sun pull itself over the water. It was peace I'd never known before. And I protected it fiercely. But peace doesn't stop the past from knocking on your door. It began small, rumors that Caleb's little contracting business was sinking. He never had much discipline with money, and once the shine of Marie's attention faded, cracks formed. The jobs got sloppy. Clients pulled out. Bills stacked up. Then I heard whispers that Marie had sold pieces of jewelry, the kind I once worked overtime to buy her, just to cover their lifestyle. I didn't smile at the news. I didn't gloat. I just nodded to myself. Choices carry weight, and theirs were finally catching up. Then came the knock on my own door. It was late afternoon, the kind of day when the sky threatens rain but holds back. I opened the door, and there she was. Marie. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup lighter than I'd ever seen. No expensive jewelry, no designer coat. Just her. Eli, she whispered, almost like saying my name hurt. For a long moment, we just stood there. I thought about slamming the door, but instead I stepped aside and let her into the house I'd built. She walked slowly, her eyes scanning the wood floors, the furniture, the photographs of sunsets and fishing trips I'd framed myself. She lingered by the mantel, where a picture of me and a group of veteran kids stood. "This place, it's beautiful," she said softly. "You look happy." I nodded. "I am." Her eyes glistened. She turned toward me, voice trembling. "I made a mistake, Eli. Caleb, he's not the man I thought he was. He drinks, he lies, he's cruel. I thought I wanted more, but what I really wanted was what we had. You and me. The life we built. Can't we," her voice cracked, "can't we try again?" For years, I had played this scene in my head. In the darkest nights, I imagined her crawling back, begging, and me delivering some sharp line that cut her down. But standing there, hearing her voice break, I realized something. I didn't need sharp words. I didn't need to prove anything. "Marie," I said calmly, "when I had nothing, you called me pathetic. You stood beside my best friend and watched me lose everything. That wasn't a mistake. That was who you chose to be. And that's who you'll always be." Her tears fell fast now. She reached out, but I stepped back. "I forgive you," I continued, "but I don't forget. And I'll never let you back into this life." Her shoulders slumped, like the weight of her own choices finally landed. She nodded, whispered something I couldn't catch, and walked out. I watched her car disappear down the gravel road, and with it went the last hold she had on me. 2 weeks later, Caleb tried. His method was different, arrogant, almost smug. He showed up at the marina where I still kept the brandy May. His voice carried that old false confidence. "Eli, my man," he said, slapping my shoulder like nothing had ever happened. "We should let bygones be bygones. Start fresh. I hear you've done well for yourself. Maybe we could work together again. Partner up. Big jobs, real money." I looked at him, really looked. His eyes darted, his clothes wrinkled, his skin pale like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. I almost pitied him. Almost. "You took my wife, Caleb," I said evenly. "You stood by her in court while she gutted me. You thought I'd crawl away and die. Now you want to partner?" He opened his mouth to reply, but I held up a hand. "I don't hate you," I said. "I don't even think about you. That's your punishment. You don't get my anger. You don't get my friendship. You get nothing." His face darkened, but he had no words. He turned and left, and just like Marie, he was gone from my life for good. That night, sitting on my porch, I thought about revenge. Not the Hollywood kind with fists and fire, but the real kind, the kind that comes from living well when others wanted you destroyed. My revenge wasn't money, though the money gave me tools. My revenge was the sound of kids laughing on fishing trips, the letters I got from veterans who found hope again, the quiet mornings where I woke up free. I built something with my second chance. And nothing Marie or Caleb did could touch it. Brandy came to visit not long after. She sat on the porch swing with her guitar, strumming softly while I grilled. Her eyes were bright, her smile easy. She looked at me and said, "Dad, I'm proud of you." Those 4 words meant more than any bank statement ever could. I realized then the greatest gift of all wasn't the forgotten investment. It wasn't the land or the house or the foundation. It was this, peace. The kind that no betrayal, no courtroom, no whisper of the past could take away. The world may have stripped me down, but it also gave me the chance to rebuild. And I built something stronger, steadier, quieter. That's the thing about revenge. Sometimes it isn't about destroying the ones who hurt you. Sometimes it's about refusing to be destroyed yourself. And in that, I had won.